a quiet rural village nestled between rolling hills and ancient baobab trees, the sun rose each day over red earth and the gentle hum of community life. Children ran barefoot through dusty paths, elders gathered beneath the shade to share wisdom, and the traditions of the ancestors guided every step the villagers took. In this place, where the drumbeat of culture echoed in every heart, lived a young woman named Amina. Amina was known throughout the village not only for her striking beauty, but for her gentle spirit. Her laughter could soften the hardest mood, and her kindness reached even the most distant neighbour. But behind her calm eyes lay a story many knew, and even more pitied. Amina had lost her mother when she was very young, a loss that shaped her early years. Her father, once a strong and loving man, fell into despair and eventually married again, a woman named Maya. Maya was nothing like Amina's mother. She carried herself with cold pride and had a sharp tongue that lashed out more than it soothed. From the day she entered their home, Amina became little more than a servant under her gaze. Still, she held herself with quiet dignity, finding comfort in nature and music, and in the secret dreams she dared not share. Now, a storm was building. Whispers moved like wind through the village. Amina was to be wed, not to someone of her choosing, but to a man chosen by Maya, a wealthy suitor whose presence brought more unease than joy. Something about the arrangement felt wrong, but the wheels had already begun to turn. The news came like an unexpected storm. Maya had arranged Amina's wedding. The groom was Jabari, a man well known in the surrounding villages. He was wealthy, influential, and carried the air of a man used to getting what he wanted. But behind his polished words and generous gifts lay something darker. Jabari was feared more than he was respected. Those who worked for him told quiet stories of cruelty and control, though none dared say them aloud in public. When Maya announced the engagement, the village buzzed with mixed reactions. Some elders nodded in approval, saying Amina would finally live a life of comfort and status. Others, especially the women who knew her gentle heart, whispered with concern. Amina herself was devastated. She had not been asked, only told. That night, beneath the moonlit sky, Amina met in secret with Kofi, the humble farmer whose love had quietly grown in her heart for years. Kofi was not rich, but his hands were honest, and his soul pure. He held her hands, rough from the soil, but warm with hope, and promised they would find a way to stop this. The next morning, Amina approached her father, hoping for intervention. But he had become a silent shadow, worn down by Maya's harsh words and manipulations. He simply said, "It is done." Maya, on the other hand, made it clear this marriage was not just about Amina. Jabari had promised a fine dowry, land, livestock, and coin. For Maya, it meant power and pride. For Amina, it felt like a sentence. Kofi, unwilling to stand by, went to the elders to plead for their help. "She does not love him," he said, his voice trembling with passion. "This is not our way. A woman's heart must speak." But some of the elders had already been swayed by Jabari's gifts. Others feared Maya's sharp tongue and influence. Then came the warning. One of Jabari's men, silent and cold-eyed, approached Kofi by the river. "Stay away," he said. "This is not your business. Do not make trouble." It wasn't a threat spoken aloud, but it hung in the air like a coiled snake. Amina, trapped between fear and duty, watched the wedding preparations begin. Drums were being readied, dresses sewn, food prepared. But in her heart, the rhythm was wrong. Something deep within her told her this union was cursed before it even began. The day of the wedding arrived with the kind of colour and noise that usually mark joyful beginnings. The sun shone high, and the air was alive with the pulse of drums, the trills of flutes, and the shuffle of feet dancing in the dust. Women wore bold prints, wrapped with grace, their hair adorned with beads and gold. Men clapped and sang, their voices rising with the rhythm. Children ran between the legs of the crowd, giggling and excited, unaware of the tension humming beneath the surface. But not everyone danced with joy. Amina sat still in the bridal hut, wrapped in the finest cloth her stepmother could find, gold and red, laced with intricate embroidery. Her hair was braided with cowries and pearls, her face painted with white clay in ancient symbols of union and fertility. She looked like a queen, but her eyes told another story. They were distant, hollow, rimmed with the kind of silence that screams louder than words. Outside, Jabari strutted like a peacock. His robe shimmered in the sun, his arms heavy with jewelry. He laughed too loudly, greeted too eagerly. He smelled of alcohol and arrogance. His eyes searched the crowd not with love, but with ownership. When the time came, the elders took their places. The village gathered under the great Iroko tree, where the sacred rites were performed. Amina was led out, graceful even in her sadness. Gasps of admiration rippled through the people, but so did murmurs. Her smile was missing. The ceremony began, chants rising like smoke. The elder leading the ritual turned to Amina and asked the sacred question, the one passed down through generations. Do you come here of your own will, to join with this man in the eyes of the ancestors? Silence. Amina looked down, her lips parted, then closed. She breathed in slowly, her fingers trembling. The elder repeated the question, a slight edge to his voice this time. Amina's eyes rose, not to Jabari, but to the sky. And still, she said nothing. Jabari's face twisted. Without warning, he reached across and slapped Amina with the back of his hand. The sound cracked like lightning across the silence. Gasps erupted from the crowd. A few women screamed. A baby began to cry. You dare embarrass me like this? Jabari hissed. Before anyone could step forward, Maya stormed in. Her eyes blazed as she shoved past the startled elder and struck Amina across the other cheek. Ungrateful girl, after everything I've done for you, you bring shame to this family. Amina staggered backward, the paint on her cheeks smudged by the blows, her crown tilting. No one moved. Even the elders were frozen, some by shock, others by fear. Maya kept shouting, her voice like a cracked drum. You are nothing without me. Do you think love will feed you? Foolish girl. Amina's knees gave out beneath her. She fell hard to the ground, dust clouding around her, her hands trembling, eyes wide but distant. Her veil slipped, her dignity scattered. The music had stopped. The village stood in stunned silence, the sacred ceremony broken, its beauty shattered by violence. A moment passed that felt like eternity. Something had just changed in the heart of the village, but no one yet knew what. As the silence thickened around the fallen bride, a slow shuffle broke through the stunned crowd. The sound of a wooden cane tapping the earth grew louder, steadier, until all eyes turned to see who dared to move at such a time. It was Mama Fatu, old as the hills and twice as wise. Mama Fatu was one of the oldest women in the village. Her back was curved, but her spirit had never bowed. Wrapped in faded indigo cloth and with silver hair wrapped in a scarf of age, she moved with purpose. The crowd parted like water before her. Even the boldest men lowered their eyes as she passed. She reached the center, where Amina lay in the dirt, bruised and shaking, her breath shallow. Mama Fatou looked down at her, then slowly turned to face Jabari and Maya. "What have you done?" Her voice was cracked, but it carried. "What abomination have you dared to bring before the ancestors today?" Maya opened her mouth to speak, but Mama Fatou raised a single finger, silencing her. "This is not our way," she said, now turning her gaze to Jabari. "You strike a bride in front of the sacred tree. You mock the rights of the elders. You bring shame upon yourself. You bring a curse upon us all." Jabari tried to respond, but his words caught in his throat. The crowd around him murmured, shifting uncomfortably. Some stepped back from him, as if afraid his disgrace might rub off on them. "You, Maya," Mama Fatou continued, "have fed this evil with your greed. You who should protect the girl your husband left in your care, and instead treat her worse than a goat." As her words fell, a strange wind rose suddenly from the west. The trees rustled in a way that felt unnatural, sharp. The sky, once bright with afternoon sun, darkened for a moment as clouds rolled across like shadows from another world. Then came a cry, a high-pitched, chilling sound from above. A single grey bird circled overhead. It called once more and then disappeared into the trees. The crowd gasped. "A spirit," someone whispered. "The spirit is watching." At that moment, Amina's body jerked, then went still. Her eyes fluttered closed and she fainted, crumpling completely into the earth. Screams rose, people backed away, children clung to their mothers. "Call the healer!" someone shouted. Moments later, the village healer arrived. A man with painted symbols across his chest and a satchel of herbs at his hip. He knelt by Amina, placed his hand on her forehead, and closed his eyes. After a long silence, he spoke. "She is not alone. Her spirit is being held, protected. Her mother walks with her." The crowd erupted in shocked murmurs. "Her mother? She's been dead for years." "But a spirit bird!" Mama Fatou nodded slowly. "The ancestors do not forget. When injustice is done beneath their gaze, they rise. This is not over." Whispers of a curse began to ripple through the village, of ancestral wrath, of dishonoured tradition, of spirits displeased. The energy in the air shifted. Fear crept into the hearts of those who had stood by silently. Something sacred had been broken, and something powerful had just awakened. That night, the village was not at rest. The drums that once pounded with celebration had fallen silent. The stars blinked above like watchful eyes, and the wind that whispered through the trees carried unease. Beneath the cover of night, villagers gathered in hushed tones under the old meeting tree, far from the ears of Jabari and Maya. Elders, mothers, fathers, and even some of the younger ones who had witnessed the chaos came together to speak what had been unspoken for too long. "They have crossed the line," someone murmured. "They brought shame before the ancestors," another whispered. "They struck her like an animal. During a sacred rite." Mama Fatou stood among them, her face grave, her voice steady as she spoke. "There is more," she said. "What you saw today is only part of the darkness." Gasps circled the group like fireflies in the dark. The marriage was a lie. It was never meant to bind Amina in honour. Jabari and Maya planned to sell her. A foreign trader is waiting beyond the hills. She would be gone by moon's end, traded like cattle. Anger rippled through the crowd. Murmurs turned into voices. Some stood, others clenched their fists. Meanwhile, in the healer's hut, Amina stirred. Her breath deepened, her fingers twitched, and slowly her eyes fluttered open. The healer and Mama Fatou were by her side. "I saw her," Amina whispered. My mother. Mama Fatu leaned closer. Speak, child. She came to me in a dream. She was dressed in white, glowing. She held my hand and said, "Your truth will rise, and their lies will fall. Speak, and they will listen." Tears welled in her eyes, but her voice was clear. She told me they were planning something worse than a forced marriage. She said I had to fight back, not with anger, but with truth. By morning, the village council had been summoned. The elders gathered in the circle of stones. Jabari stood, defiant but visibly shaken. Maya fidgeted by his side, her confident smirk gone. Mama Fatu stepped forward, then Amina, who walked slowly, wrapped in a simple cloth, her bruises fading, but her spirit firm. "The girl has spoken," said Elder Kanja, the head of the council, "and the ancestors have shown their hand. We cannot turn away." Kofi rose from the crowd, heart thudding in his chest. "I will speak," he said, "not for reward, not for show, but because I love her. I have loved her for many seasons. If she will have me, I will marry her, with her full heart and will." A soft murmur of agreement rose. Suddenly, Maya bolted, pushing past the council in panic. But she didn't get far. Several women, strong and swift, stopped her in her tracks. She fought like a cornered jackal, but they held her firm. Jabari remained, now pale and speechless. The council moved quickly. "You have broken sacred law," Elder Kanja declared. "You will be stripped of honor. No man nor woman of this village will trade, speak, or shelter you again. You are banished." The villagers erupted, not with chaos, but with resolve. Justice had been called, and they answered. Maya was made to remain in the village under punishment. She would serve those she scorned, cleaning the places she once walked with pride. Jabari, alone and disgraced, disappeared beyond the hills, never to return. Amina stood tall that day, not as a victim, but as a voice. She stepped forward and, to everyone's surprise, said, "I forgive." A heavy silence followed. "I do not forgive to forget," she continued. "I forgive to be free, and I choose love, not because I must, but because I can." She turned to Kofi, smiled for the first time in many days, and placed her hand in his. In that moment, the village saw not just a girl who had suffered, but a woman who had risen. The sun rose gently on the day of Amina's new wedding, casting a golden glow over the village that now breathed with a renewed sense of peace. This time, there were no grand displays of wealth, no forced smiles or whispered warnings. The drums beat not with pressure, but with joy. The rhythm was lighter, truer, carried by the hearts of those who believed in love, freedom, and justice. Amina wore a simple dress of soft blue, hand-woven by the village women who had once only watched from the sidelines. Her braids were adorned with white cowries and fresh flowers picked by the children that morning. She walked with grace, her hand in Kofi's, her eyes full of light. No longer bound by fear or tradition misused, she stood in front of the same elders, under the same sacred tree. But everything was different now. Kofi beamed beside her, humble and strong, the farmer who had once been silenced, now standing as her equal. The ceremony was short and sweet, blessed by the words of Mama Fatu, who offered a prayer not just for their union, but for the rebirth of the village's soul. "May the roots of truth grow deep in our soil," she said, her eyes scanning the crowd. "And may we never again forget to listen to the hearts of our daughters." While the celebration echoed with laughter and song, Maya was nowhere near the joy. Stripped of her pride and position, she now worked in silence, sweeping the paths, fetching water, grinding millet. It was not cruelty that kept her there, but consequence. She had been given the choice to leave, but the village had insisted she repay what she took, not in coin, but in service. And Amina, she became more than a bride that day. She became a symbol. Children listened to her story, women found courage in her strength, and even the elders began to speak differently about the rights of women in matters of the heart. What had once been unthinkable was now a vow. Never again would a girl be given without her voice. Never again would silence be mistaken for consent. As the sun dipped low and lanterns flickered to life, Amina and Kofi danced beneath the stars, surrounded by those who truly celebrated them. Their love had not only saved each other, it had awakened a village. And from that day forward, the people remembered not just the pain of what had happened, but the power of what had changed. And so, the tale of Amina came to rest like the setting sun over the village, warm, golden, and full of quiet meaning. Her story, once buried beneath fear and silence, now lived on the lips of every elder, echoed in the lullabies of mothers, and whispered in the games of children. It reminded the people of the dangers that lie in unchecked greed and cruelty. How a heart hardened by pride, like Maya's, could turn home into prison, and how wealth without wisdom, like Jabari's, brought only shame. But more than that, it taught of the enduring power of truth. How even a soft voice, when carried by courage and spirit, could rise and shake the strongest walls. Amina's fall became her rise, and through her, the village remembered that the strength of a community lies not in silence, but in standing together. They learned that the spirit world watches with patient eyes, and when injustice is done beneath their gaze, the wind itself may rise to speak. Most of all, they learned that women's voices are not ornaments for ceremony. They are the fire of life, the keepers of wisdom, and the stewards of love. When their rights are honoured, the entire village thrives. As they say in the old tongue, the tree that grows crooked is eventually cut down, but the one that bends and rises will stand through the storm. And Amina, the girl who bent but never broke, stood tall, her roots strong, her spirit unshaken.